The reason I have to introduce myself is because I didn't do my homework today by getting Beth any kind of history on me. And with this many officers in the room, it's probably a good thing to keep a secret. You can laugh at that. They're going to be very serious about it. I like the pink handcuffs, by the way. I don't want to try them on. My name is Bo Quickel, and I represent a group called Vigilante Truckers, and that's vigilantetrucker.com. V-I-G-I-L-A-N-T-E, trucker.com, that's the commercial. Please visit the website, you'll see what we're doing. I'll speak on it in another segment later, but when you understand what I do, then you'll understand why I'm here. I do not represent any organization. I'm not involved with law enforcement. I'm not involved specifically with any church. I'm not involved with, specifically with any nonprofit. So I have a very non-biased, non-political correct attitude. If I offend you, I don't mean to. If I churn your stomach and make you want to go to the bathroom and throw up, I do mean to. This is a very dark subject. It's a horrific subject. I'm the greeter at my church, so I have an upbeat, positive attitude, but please don't mistake the fact that I can talk about this without crying most of the time as my inability to understand just how serious this topic is. So, it's 10 after the hour. I'm going to talk for about 25, 30 minutes. I'm going to move around a little, Mary. I got to get a little closer. And just talk about what human trafficking is. How many people in the room have dealt with human trafficking and know really what human trafficking is? Just so I can gauge the room. Excellent. All right. For you 3 or 4, I'm going to go all the way back to 101. So just stick with me for a while. Some of these stats you're going to have heard before, and maybe I'll throw out a couple that you haven't. I met with the FBI last week, and I really like how the Special Agent Shonda started out this conversation, and what she says is, let me tell you what human trafficking is not, and then she got into what human trafficking is, because there are some misconceptions. I went head first and then feet first into human trafficking a little over 2 years ago. And up to that point, I don't think I really even had a good grasp what it is either. In fact, I don't even know why they call it human trafficking, because it's kind of a misnomer for what's actually going on. But what human trafficking is not is human smuggling. This is not about moving Mexicans across the border into Texas in a van, or it's not about moving Europeans and cargo carriers on ships across the ocean into Miami. Okay? Human smuggling is not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about today is human trafficking. And what human trafficking is basically broken into 2 segments. One is labor. People are forced into labor. That makes up 20% of the global thought process of human trafficking. And then the other 80% of human trafficking is sex slavery. Now, for a definition of trafficking, coercion is the proper term, and that's what's going to be a legal term. Both the federal governments as well as local law enforcements are now starting to use that. But somebody is coerced. That can be physical, that can be mental, it can be a combination of both. But if somebody is performing an act, whether it's agricultural labor or forced prostitution, same thing, if they're doing it in a manner that is coerced, or they're doing it because they have been coerced, then that would be human trafficking. That's everybody 18 and older. If you're 17 and younger, then you're a minor. And it doesn't matter whether you want to or not. If you're performing labor or a sex act for money in a coerced, well, non-coerced way, is still considered trafficking. Sexual exploitation, statutory rape. Those kind of ideas can all run together. Is that making sense to everybody? All right, so does anybody feel like the room is leaning maybe to this side? Because that's what it looks like from up here. We got everybody that walks in from here, make them come to this side, just so I can quit leaning. All right? All right, so that's a basic definition of human trafficking. What kind of problem is it? Why are we even here today? All right, so internationally, numbers range from 27 million to 32 million slaves in the world. There's more slaves in the world right now than at any other point in history. So if there's any history majors in here, more slaves right now, which makes just no sense at all. And then people like to take that and say, well, that can't be America, that's other places. And that's really what I thought. When I was doing all my initial research, I was looking at European countries, the Russian blocs, Serbia, war-torn areas. You want to go down to South America and look at South America, and you look at poverty levels. And so it was other places. And so when I would even bring it up, people thought I was a missionary, right? Well, I always went before God, and excuse me if I bring him up, but he's a buddy of mine, so I'll talk about him occasionally. But when I first went to him, I said, as a youngster even, I said, God, don't send me, to another place. I'll do ministry, but just keep me local, because I've always felt that there's always some problem right next door that I can deal with without having to get on a plane or a bus or a car or a boat, right? So, but I originally looked elsewhere for the problem. I bring it up to people. They thought that I was missioning to Europe or other countries. And here's the reality of it. Now, I didn't pull any specific numbers for Rowan County. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about Mecklenburg County, a pretty close neighbor. All right, and I grew up, I'm a Concord Spider, don't boo me. But so I'm local to this area as well. I was a builder for 20 years. I built a number of houses in Rowan County. So I understand this place. I've been driving by the Alpine Club on 85 for a couple of decades, as most of you have. So I got a handhold of what's going on here. But let me just give you some stats. We're going to start in the USA. $9.5 billion. $9.5 billion are spent on these girls, having sex with these girls. And yes, there are young men as well. The stats I've got last week, it was 80% female, 20% male. It's now 85% female, 15% male. Still an issue, both sides of the fence. But $9.5 billion is spent on having sex with these individuals. In this country, America, good old USA. All right? Now, because I've never had $9.5 billion, and I don't think you have either, if you have or do, there's a donate button on my website. $9.5 billion is more money than is spent on all professional sports in this country combined. $9.5 billion is more money than is spent on all professional sports in this country combined. Right? That's a lot of money. That makes it a big business. That makes it a sophisticated business. But that's just in the country. All right? 300,000 individuals are involved in sex slavery in this country right now, today. That's a U.S. Department of Justice figure. That's not one of mine. It's not a Wikipedia. Okay? 300,000 individuals. Let's break it down and get it a little bit smaller. Charlotte, North Carolina, the 6th, on a scale of 1 to whatever, they are ranked 6th in the demand for these girls in the country. Now this is, what are we, the Gillian Road exit or the Orchard Road exit? What was that? What's the number on the exit? Somebody tell me. Gillian Road's what number? 74. All right, so 30 miles that way is the 6th largest demand in our country. And I promise you it's bleeding out into Salisbury. I promise you it's bleeding out into Rowan County. Guaranteed. So, why does Charlotte have that kind of number? Why does any city gonna rank for demand? Demand means there's a bunch of guys that are in town to have sex with these girls. Okay? So why is Charlotte, why would it be 6th ranked? Well, one, we have an international airport. Sexual tourism means that somebody will fly from another state or another country to anonymously have sex with an individual in our fair city of Charlotte. Okay, so that's the first thing to show you. You're looking up and down the East Coast. Atlanta ranks very high. Miami ranks very high. New York City obviously ranks very high. A lot of that's airport driven. Number 2 thing that Charlotte has is convention centers and lots of conventions. And so men are coming to town with free time on their hands. All right, so that's the next reason why we would have a high demand. To get an understanding of that, when the National Democratic convention came to town. And I know there were actually people staying as far north as Salisbury for that. They actually rescued 6 girls during those few days that were being sex trafficked. None of those girls were from North Carolina. Okay, so just because it's or just because it has that kind of demand level doesn't mean that Charlotte and surrounding areas can even keep up with it. Traffickers, I call them handlers, pimps, will actually bring the girls into the area for these events. Yes, your airport's probably got the demand built in the city, but anytime there's something big going on, a big ball game, professional sports, basketball game, football game, soon to be baseball game, bringing men into the city, men with free time's demand. All right, so, and then the fourth biggest factor is that we are the trucking capital of the East Coast. Within 10 hours, 90% of the population in this country lives within 10 hours of Charlotte. And because of that, so it's a great little fact, but what that means is the trucks are coming and going on 85, 75, 40, 20, 26, all those byways cross very, close to Charlotte. And truck drivers, here's an amazing fact, and I'll speak to this later, truck drivers make up 60% of the demand for these girls. 60. So when you put all those factors into Charlotte, now you understand why the demand is so high. And that's what sex trafficking is. It's a product that is sold. You have a seller, you have a buyer. God would be the manufacturer, but it's the women's bodies, right? Give a short history. Been an international businessman for the last 2 decades, and so entrepreneurship and starting up business has always been my thing that I was blessed and able to do.